Investigators turned up the heat today on actor Robert Wagner and the mysterious death of his wife, Natalie Wood. Just last week, 48 Hours broke the news that Wagner, now 87, was named a person of interest in the suspicious death, which was originally declared to be an accidental drowning in 1981.
In 1980, Natalie Wood boarded the honeymoon yacht with her husband, Robert Wagner. The next morning, she disappeared. Natalie's body was found floating on the water with marks that made police raise many questions about what really happened that night. But more than 40 years later, new evidence sent chills through Hollywood. Because the true story may not be about an accident, but a murder that was hidden for too long. Natalie Wood, Hollywood's golden girl. A perfect smile, a brilliant career magazine covers. Everything spoke of one thing: she was living the American dream. But behind that glamour was a marriage filled with fear, control, and violence. Even her husband Wagner had once had an affair with another man. Her daughter Natasha Gregson recently broke the silence. She asserted that her mother had once said, "If I die, it can only be Wagner." Why was the investigation closed so hastily? Why did Robert Wagner's statements change over 4 decades? And what led police to reopen the case after so many years, with Wagner listed as the official suspect? Today we will unveil previously undisclosed statements and explore a truth darker than anything Hollywood dared imagine. The night of November 28, 1981, the yacht Splendor drifted quietly off the coast of Catalina Island, where white-capped waves lapped against the hull in a rhythmic but cold manner. The night sky was hazy, sparkling with stars, but shrouded in a light mist, making everything on deck look both magical and ominous. On deck, Natalie Wood, her husband Robert Wagner, co-star Christopher Walken, and Captain Dennis Davern gathered. At first, there was laughter, clinking of glasses, but minutes later, the atmosphere grew tense. The argument grew louder, mixed with sudden noises, shattering glasses, hurried footsteps on the wooden floor, then a piercing scream. Don't everything seemed submerged in darkness, leaving only the waves striking the hull as if witnessing an inevitable event they could not prevent. The space became eerily quiet. When dawn broke, light filtered through the mist. Only 3 men remained on the yacht, and Natalie had vanished. The suspects at that point were Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, and Davern. Before delving into their statements, let's look back at Natalie Wood's life, a life filled with sorrow and emotional scars. Natalie Wood was born in a small apartment in San Francisco on July 20th, 1938. Her real name, Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko. Her father, Nikolai, was a poor carpenter. Her mother, Maria, had dreamed of being a ballet artist in St. Petersburg. Maria saw the light in her daughter's big eyes and decided to turn her own unfinished dream into reality. When Natalie was just 4, her mother brought her to the Happy Land studio just to try it out. The little girl cried one scripted tear, and Hollywood had a prodigy. From then on, Natalie's childhood consisted of long, 18-hour days on set. Her mother, Maria, stood behind the camera script in hand eyes, never leaving her daughter. "Don't smile, cry," she shouted when Natalie grew tired. Natalie earned thousands of dollars a week, but not a cent went to her. Maria kept it all, saying, "This is your future." Natalie then attended a special school for child stars with Elizabeth Taylor, but had no friends. She started taking sleeping pills at 12 to catch naps between scenes. Once at 7, she nearly drowned on a pier, a fear of water that haunted her for life. At 16, Natalie starred in Rebel Without a Cause as Judy, the rebellious girl beside James Dean. Her eyes stared directly into the camera as if to say, "I'm no longer a child." The film made her a teen idol queen, and her first Oscar nomination came as affirmation. But the pressure did not stop. Hollywood called her Natalie Nervous because she often cried on set. 1961 was a peak year West Side Story as Maria, singing, dancing, loving in immortal melodies. Then Splendor in the Grass with Warren Beatty, playing Deanie Heartbroken by Passionate Love. 2 Oscar nominations in a year, yet Natalie simply said, "I'm tired." Amid the spotlight, love arrived like a breeze. In 1957, at 19, she met Robert Wagner, the handsome 27-year-old star of The Star. They fell in love at first sight. He was charming and seemed the perfect dream for any girl. They married when she turned 19, a lavish wedding like a fairy tale between 2 Hollywood stars. Wagner gave her a 4-carat diamond ring, and the wedding took place on December 29, 1957, at a villa in Scottsdale, Arizona. Light snow fell. Natalie wore a Vera Maxwell white gown. 300 VIP guests cheered. The press called it Hollywood's dream wedding. But the dream lasted only 5 years. In early 1961, Natalie caught her husband cheating, not with a woman, but with a man. It was David Cavendish, their English butler. The shock led Natalie to overdose on sleeping pills and be hospitalized. To protect Wagner's Bobby Sox idol image, she remained silent, allowing the media to speculate that she herself had an affair with Warren Beatty in Splendor in the Grass. Her sister Lana Wood later confirmed Natalie saw RJ with a man, and it destroyed her. They divorced in 1962 due to career differences, leaving Natalie heartbroken. In 1969, she married British producer Richard Gregson. They had daughter Natasha in 1970, the first time Natalie felt the happiness of motherhood. But Gregson cheated, and the marriage ended in tears. Then one day in 1972, on a street in London, she happened to see Wagner again. One look, and they knew they still belonged to each other. Their second wedding took place on July 16, 1972, at a private Los Angeles villa. No guests, only family. In 1974, daughter Courtney was born. They were Hollywood's golden couple, partying with Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, living in a Beverly Hills mansion. But behind the smiles, cracks appeared. Wagner was jealous of every male colleague, from Warren Beatty to Christopher Walken. In his memoir, Pieces of My Heart, he admitted to slapping his wife. Natalie continued acting, but she was exhausted by the spotlight and Wagner's relentless jealousy. She took a 4-year hiatus to be with her children, then returned with Brainstorm, her final film co-starring Walken. No one knew that the November 1981 weekend trip on the yacht Splendor would be the last time she stepped into the light. Even before that, the trip story had many suspicious points. Everything could have been prevented beforehand. For years before that fateful night, Natalie Wood carried an unnamed fear of water. As a child, she nearly drowned filming a scene. Since then, she avoided deep waters, night seas, even long bathtubs. Friends said just hearing the waves made her heart tighten. In an interview, she once smiled sadly and said, "I'm terrified of water. If I die from water, it surely won't be an accident." Words that seemed joking later echoed like prophecy. Yet fate was cruel. In late November 1981, Natalie agreed to board the yacht Splendor with her husband Robert Wagner and co-star Christopher Walken, the man driving Wagner crazy with jealousy. In the cold waters of Catalina, Natalie tried to maintain peace, but the air on board was thick like fog. Davern, the captain, said she almost avoided her husband's gaze, spoke to Walken in a low voice, and kept looking at the dark sea where waves seemed to whisper something ominous. Even in the days before the trip, Natalie showed unusual signs of unease. She told her sister Lana, "I don't know why, but something's wrong. I feel unsafe around him." When friends invited her to parties, Natalie shook her head. I have to go to Catalina with Robert. He wants it. Her voice grew faint, like someone walking toward a place she didn't want to go. A friend recalled Natalie had a strange look, half fear, half acceptance. That fateful night arrived. The sea was calm, the sky clear, but inside the yacht, a storm was forming. Wagner drank, eyes burning, seeing Natalie and Wagner speak privately. Tension rose, and the argument erupted. Davern heard glass-breaking objects hitting walls, then Natalie's voice high, angry, fearful. Then a brief scream, don't, and silence. A silence so chilling. Afterward, only 3 men remained on board. Natalie vanished. When Wagner realized she was gone, the clock read past midnight. The yacht's dinghy also disappeared. Officially, Wagner thought she might have gone for a walk or to calm herself, but that was absurd. Natalie feared water, especially at night. She would never go out alone, especially in pajamas, a red sweater, and socks. Yet no one turned on the searchlights. No one called for immediate rescue. Davern said he wanted to call police, but Wagner said, wait until morning. So they waited. On the yacht, only the waves, the faint engine hum, and a terrifying emptiness where the woman once stood. The next morning at 8 a.m., Natalie Wood's body was found about a mile from the yacht, face down in the water, dark hair wrapped around her soaked nightgown. Her blood alcohol content was 0.14%, with fresh bruises on her cheeks and hands and scratches around her knees. The dinghy floated nearby, engine off, key and anchor still in place. Everything seemed frozen mid-action, as if someone had meant to do something, then stopped. The most suspicious point was that at that time during investigation, the 3 men on the Splendor gave 3 different stories. Los Angeles police quickly concluded drowning accident, but something didn't fit. All accounts were fractured, and in those cracks, a mystery began to emerge. Dennis Davern, the yacht captain, was the first to break the silence. He said that night he heard a violent argument between Natalie and Wagner. Their voices were loud, glasses broke. Someone hit the wall, he said. Then Natalie screamed, "Don't!" And then silence. Davern said that after discovering Natalie missing, he wanted to turn on the searchlights, but Wagner said, no need. Don't wake everyone, wait until morning. That testimony years later horrified the public. Robert Wagner, by contrast, always insisted nothing unusual happened. In his official statement, he said, I thought Natalie went to bed. When I didn't see her in the room, I guessed she went down to the dinghy to tie a line that hit the hull. But when asked why he didn't call for immediate rescue, Wagner vaguely said, I didn't think it was serious. Later, he admitted arguing with Natalie, but insisted it was just a small quarrel. Still, his statement didn't match the bruises and physical marks on her body. Christopher Walken, the co-star third man on the yacht, initially chose complete silence. For years, he refused interviews, only saying it was a tragedy. Nothing more to say. But when the case reopened in 2011, Walken changed his statement. He admitted hearing an argument between the couple and a loud noise on deck. That brief testimony added to the chaos. Everyone said they knew nothing, yet all heard something. Some said Natalie fell while trying to tie the dinghy. Others said she left after the argument. But no one could explain why a woman afraid of water, a poor swimmer, would go out alone at night in pajamas and socks. More frightening than the testimonies was that Natalie Wood's body had barely cooled when LAPD quickly closed the case. A few-page report concluded accidental drowning. No deep investigation, no cross-examination, no suspects. Everything was handled so smoothly, almost too neatly. Within days, the Hollywood shocking event fell silent as if it never existed. Witnesses were never seriously interviewed, statements ignored. Those closest to Natalie left the scene without thorough questioning. But insiders knew Robert Wagner was not an ordinary man. He was a major TV star backed by powerful studios and Hollywood sponsors. Rumors circulated that many calls were made from above. Journalists trying to dig deeper were invited to stop. Some papers received unofficial orders, "Don't touch Wagner, don't make a fuss." And witnesses, on the island and in the industry, gradually went silent. Hollywood at the time lived by reputation, and reputation was protected at all costs. A beautiful female star died mysteriously at sea, a powerful husband, and a system ready to bury the truth to protect an image. Critical files disappeared. Deposition records were removed from archives. For 3 decades, Natalie Wood's death was referred to only as a sad accident. Questions piled up what really happened on the Splendor that fateful night. From their return after dinner to Natalie's disappearance. What occurred in that time? Who was the last to see her alive? Why were screams heard from the water, yet no one on the yacht reported it? And why, after all these years, does no story align, no detail truly clear? Amid that lingering mystery, another secret emerged from the shadows, a secret Natalie took to her grave. In 2021, her sister Lana Wood shocked the world by releasing the book Little Sister. My investigation into the mysterious death of Natalie Wood. In it, Lana revealed a cruel truth. Natalie had confided that she had been assaulted by one of Hollywood's most powerful men, Kirk Douglas. To understand the gravity of this revelation, we must go back to the 1950s. At that time, Natalie was just 16, a rising star full of potential, tightly managed by her mother, Maria. Maria not only guided, but practically controlled every step of her daughter, believing that only powerful connections could propel Natalie to the pinnacle of fame. According to Lana, it was Maria who arranged a meeting between Natalie and Kirk Douglas, the renowned male star whom Hollywood worshipped for his charisma and power. For Maria, it was a golden opportunity, a strategic move to advance Natalie deeper into the world of major roles and dazzling lights. But that night did not unfold as she had hoped. Natalie returned home in a state of panic, clothes disheveled, voice trembling. She pulled her younger sister aside, whispering in fear, "He hurt me, Lana." No one else knew. Not another word was spoken. From that moment, Natalie carried the burden of that secret for life, an invisible wound that the silver screen's glamour could never conceal. As her career soared, as Hollywood celebrated her as a symbol of beauty and talent, Natalie still lived with that haunting. She never recounted it, never accused, merely buried it deep within like a small crack beneath a radiant smile. But with Lana's revelation, the public was forced to confront the dark side of classic Hollywood, a world where young women were turned into commodities, where power and fame were spells masking abuse. That revelation not only opened a shadowed corner of Natalie's life, but also lifted the veil on the harsh mechanisms that ruled the film capital, where powerful men were shielded by studios' lawyers and PR teams, where young women were taught that silence was the only way to survive. In that atmosphere, had Natalie spoken up, she could have lost everything: career, reputation, and even her future. Kirk Douglas was not the only one protected by the system. Producers, directors, managers all operated in a machine that prioritized profit over justice. And within that machine, Natalie, with fear and unhealed wounds, grew up loved, married, and perhaps continued to trust the untrustworthy. For once you know betrayal and harm, even the heights of Hollywood are not enough to make you feel safe. Everything seemed lost to oblivion until one person, Captain Dennis Davern, broke the silence, revealing everything on a live television broadcast. And from that moment, The door, locked for 30 years, began to creak open. 30 years after the fateful night of 1981 and 2011, the case was suddenly reopened by the only person besides her husband who had been on the yacht that night, Captain Dennis Davern. Appearing on NBC's Today Show, the man, weary-faced and eyes full of remorse, spoke words that shook America. "I lied to the police." For 30 years, Davern had hidden the truth, and now he could no longer bear the weight of his conscience. Davern recounted that night, aboard the Splendor in the Catalina waters, the atmosphere grew suffocating due to a violent argument between Natalie Wood and her husband, actor Robert Wagner. Christopher Walken. Natalie's co-star in Brainstorm was present, but had retreated to a cabin when the dispute broke out. According to Davern, he heard yelling, the clatter of objects, and then a terrifying silence. "I knew something was wrong," he said, "but I was too afraid. Wagner was famous, the owner of the yacht, and I was just an employee." When Wagner said Natalie had left the yacht in the dinghy, Davern did not dare to argue. He obeyed no searchlights, no police call, and lied in the report that Natalie had a habit of walking alone at night on the water. That belated confession hit like a bomb, exploding the simmering suspicions in the public's mind for decades. Immediately after the broadcast, the Los Angeles Police Department officially reopened the investigation into Natalie Wood's death. Investigators began reviewing all files, cross-checking statements, and searching for the lost pieces. They found many inconsistencies, especially the timing of Natalie's last sighting and the position of her body, found more than 1.5 kilometers from the yacht. Some new witnesses came forward claiming they heard a woman's screams from the water around midnight, while music still played from the yacht. Alongside the reopened investigation, forensic experts were invited to review Natalie's body through archived images. The new autopsy report sent shivers through the public. It clearly stated that Natalie's body bore multiple large bruises, particularly on her arm's neck and legs, injuries that doctors said could not simply result from falling into the water. Some showed signs of strong impact, suggesting a struggle before she fell into the sea. Consequently, Natalie Wood's death certificate was amended from accidental drowning to drowning due to undetermined causes. By 2018, after years of additional investigation, the Los Angeles Police Department declared Robert Wagner the prime suspect in the case. Lieutenant John Carina, leading the investigation team, stated he was the last person with Natalie before she disappeared. All evidence points back to him. However, Wagner remained silent, refusing direct interviews, speaking only through his lawyer, claiming complete innocence, and insisting the event was a tragic accident. The public, already divided, grew even more polarized. Some believing Natalie was pushed into the water in a fit of anger, others claiming she was drunk and fell by herself. The story did not stop there. Over the past 2 years, 2 new witnesses unexpectedly came forward, and their revelations sent chills down spines. They said that the night Natalie Wood disappeared from the yacht Splendor, they heard her screaming for help, sounds of struggle, objects crashing, all blending into a horrific scene amid the pitch-black night on the calm sea. One of these witnesses was a 17-year-old boy at the time. He was merely a sailor on a nearby deck, a minor figure in the noisy event, and for decades his testimony was ignored, dismissed as meaningless echoes in the night. But now he chose to speak. He asserted he remembered clearly that night on the Splendor, a fiery argument erupted, followed by unmistakable sounds, a woman calling for help, objects crashing. Then a chilling silence engulfing everything. These new revelations became even more shocking when Marty Rulli, the investigative author who spent years seeking the truth about Natalie's death, officially released her book, Natalie Wood and the Devil She Knew. even before publication, the book sparked public uproar, reigniting both open debate and tense legal discussions. Ruley believes authorities now have sufficient evidence to reopen the case, possibly convening a grand jury investigation, a step unprecedented in 4 decades since Natalie's death. She emphasizes that only when witnesses are sworn to tell everything they know can the truth have a chance to see the light. But the revelation that sent the coldest shivers came from Marilyn Wayne, the woman who had moored her boat near the Splendor that night. Marilyn said she heard a woman's desperate cries echoing in the darkness. "Help me, someone, please help me, I'm drowning." The cries repeated, weakening, then vanished into the night. Even more terrifying, Natalie had previously confided in Marilyn Wagner, "Will make me disappear." If those words were true, Natalie not only feared the water, she feared the man she called her husband. And the haunting question remains, why is Robert Wagner still free? How, after all these years, has he never faced a single charge? According to records, the night Natalie went missing, the Coast Guard was not notified until 3:30 a.m., over 4 hours after she was last seen. Roger Smith, the captain of the rescue vessel that found her body, said he was only called at 5:11 a.m., nearly 6 hours after Natalie vanished. 6 hours enough time to erase any chance of survival. In a drowning, every minute counts. Why was the distress signal sent so late? Who ordered the delay, and then adding another layer of mystery? The autopsy report showed Natalie had a blood alcohol level of 0.4% along with motion sickness and pain relief medications, substances that could impair balance and slow reactions in cold water. But most striking were the bruises on her arms, legs, and face, which some forensic experts said were not accident injuries. They bore the marks of struggle of violence. And if so, that fateful night was not merely an accident, it could have been a crime concealed beneath the dark waters. Yet even with Captain Davern's confession opening a new path, the investigation gradually stalled. Nearly 4 decades had passed. Physical evidence was no longer intact. The dinghy was damaged. Clothes rotted, bottles and glasses broken revealed nothing. Some key witnesses had died, while statutes of limitation made prosecution nearly impossible. Investigators had to admit in a report, "We cannot prove this was a homicide, but we also cannot say it was an accident." Nevertheless, by 2022, after more than 10 years of review, the Los Angeles Police Department announced the case had exhausted all viable leads and was classified as a cold case, an open file with no progress. Robert Wagner, then 92, was removed from the active suspect list, though police emphasized that Natalie Wood's death remains an unsolved mystery. Yet, whenever the case is mentioned, people still cannot stop asking what really happened on the yacht Splendor that night. As for Dennis Davern, the captain who remained silent for 30 years, he said that speaking the truth was the only way he could find peace. I don't want to blame anyone, he shared in a final interview. I just want Natalie to truly rest. I stayed silent too long, and now at least I've done the right thing. His words close a tragic chapter that never truly ended, one of Hollywood's most haunting cases, where the truth drifts eternally like Natalie Wood once did amid the cold black waves of Catalina. Yet even if people forget or let go for Natalie's loved ones, especially her sister Lana Wood and daughter Natasha Gregson Wagner, the doubt remains an unhealed wound. When the Los Angeles Police Department reopened the investigation and named Robert Wagner, the prime suspect, both women reacted emotionally, each in her own way, but united. In one point, they did not believe Natalie simply slipped into the water. Lana Wood, The always outspoken sister has long publicly stated she believes Robert Wagner must bear responsibility for her sister's death. In numerous interviews, Lana asserted that the bruises on Natalie's body, particularly on her wrists and head, could not have been caused merely by hitting the yacht when falling into the sea. She believes a violent argument occurred that night, and that Wagner may have done something that led to Natalie's death. For Lana, Wagner's refusal to cooperate with police after the case was reopened only strengthened that suspicion. If he were truly innocent, why remain silent, she once said in a television interview. As for Natasha Gregson, Wagner, Natalie's daughter, with director Richard Gregson, later adopted by Wagner, her feelings are far more complex. Throughout her childhood, Natasha always regarded Robert Wagner as her father. He nurtured and cared for her, giving her love and security after her mother's sudden death. For her, Daddy Wagner was not just a father, but a protector during the darkest years. She once said, "I love him. I'm grateful to him. But I also know there are things I will never understand." Even so, deep down, Natasha cannot fully suppress her doubts. In the 2020 HBO documentary Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind, which she produced, Natasha admitted that part of her still wonders what truly happened on the Splendor that night in 1981. Despite maintaining a calm tone, viewers can clearly sense the inner struggle when she mentions Wagner, between love and suspicion, between gratitude and the inescapable feeling that something was concealed. In that film, Natasha also described her stepfather as a dedicated man, always trying to protect Natalie's image and shield her, the little girl of 11 at the time, from the harshness of the media. But at the same time, she said something that left the audience silent. Maybe he did it out of love for my mother, or maybe out of guilt. That was the first time Natasha publicly acknowledged she had considered the possibility that Wagner was not entirely innocent. Those close to the family say that in recent years, Natasha has kept in touch with Wagner, visiting him regularly, but the relationship is now shrouded in silence. They avoid discussing the fateful night on the yacht. Whenever asked, Natasha only replies, "I choose to believe in the better things of the past." Yet her eyes often drift as if she herself does not entirely believe that statement. Lana Wood, by contrast, continues to fight, continue interviews, continue writing not for revenge, but to seek justice for her sister. "I don't want anyone to go to jail." She once said, "I just want the truth. Natalie deserves that." That is the voice of a woman who has lived her entire life under the shadow of tragedy, unable to accept that her sister's story could end with the words "accident." And between these two women, one sister firmly believing a crime occurred, one daughter trying to reconcile love and doubt, the name Robert Wagner still hovers like a shadow in Hollywood history. He has never been charged, yet has never been fully freed from suspicion. For Lana and Natasha, despite taking separate paths, they remain bound by a question with no answer. Ultimately, what really happened on the Splendor that night? Over 4 decades have passed, yet the mystery surrounding the death of actress Natalie Wood continues to haunt the world. The pieces come together. Captain Dennis Davern's confession, the suspicious bruises, Robert Wagner's silence, and the tears of her loved ones, all forming a picture both tragic and ambiguous. Was it merely an accident on a night of rough seas, or a tragedy concealed beneath Hollywood's glamour? Each piece of evidence, each testimony leads to different directions. Yet one thing is certain. The truth about that night remains buried beneath the cold waters of Catalina Island. So, what do you think? Who should truly be held responsible for Natalie Wood's death? Can justice be served, Or will this forever remain one of the greatest mysteries in American cinematic history? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you love real emotional and dramatic stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next videos. Thank you for joining me on the journey to the depths of one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking mysteries.